John Carter had no idea how he had ended up in a place like this, standing in front of a massive alien throne, surrounded by towering guards and strange creatures whispering in a language he couldn't understand. One moment, he was a captured soldier during a failed Earth mission on a distant colony, and the next, he was inside the heart of an alien empire alone, unarmed, and completely at their mercy. The room was filled with gold-colored pillars, glowing walls, and eyes that followed his every move. In the center of it all sat Queen Zaylira, ruler of the Thalara Empire, known across the galaxy for her cold power and unmatched control. She looked nothing like any creature John had seen before, tall and elegant, with silver skin, glowing eyes, and a voice that seemed to echo even when she spoke softly. As the drums of ceremony echoed across the chamber, a voice announced in the alien tongue, translated instantly through a collar on his neck, that the Thalara had accepted Earth's surrender and, as a symbol of loyalty, had brought forward a gift, a living human. John stiffened as the Queen's eyes locked on him. He expected humiliation or punishment, perhaps to be chained or sent away like a pet. But instead, something stranger happened. She stood from her throne, descended the steps in silence, and walked directly to him. She studied his face like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve, then turned to her advisors and said something that made the entire room go silent. The translator buzzed softly in his ear, and the words almost didn't make sense. "I will take him. Not as a slave. Not as a pet. He shall be my consort." A low gasp moved through the audience like wind through tall grass. John blinked, unsure if he had heard it correctly. The guards tensed. Some nobles looked away in shock. Even the translator paused for a moment, as if confused by the decision. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder, not as a master claiming property, but as someone marking a choice. John's mind raced. He didn't even know who this queen truly was or what her people expected from a consort. He had been ready for battle, torture, or at least prison, not this. Everything about the situation felt wrong. Why would the most powerful alien leader choose a human from a defeated world as her partner? Was this a trick? A trap? He looked into her glowing eyes but found no hatred, only curiosity, and something deeper, something close to fear. As the queen led him away from the throne, whispers spread across the chamber, and the guards followed in silence. John was taken deeper into the palace, into a place no outsider had ever been, and though no chains bound him, the heavy silence around him felt like a cage. The corridors were lined with shimmering walls, strange lights floated in the air, and doors opened at her command with just a word. Every step he took added more questions to his mind. Who was she really? What did she want from him? And why did the others look at him with both pity and fear? He was taken to a private chamber filled with soft lights, alien designs, and food he didn't recognize. The queen spoke again, this time more calmly, telling him he was not her prisoner, but also not free. "You are special," she said, her voice echoing like a song. "You came from a world with forgotten strength. My people have seen something in your kind that we have lost. I wish to learn from you, to see if the old stories are true." John had no idea what she meant. He wasn't special, just a soldier, trained to survive. But now, trapped in a foreign palace with eyes watching from every corner, he realized that this was not just about him. Something was happening behind the curtains of power, something bigger than a strange royal decision. He could feel it in the silence, in the way the guards avoided his gaze, in the way the queen paused every time she spoke about the future. And somewhere deep inside, beyond the fear and confusion, a part of him whispered that his life was no longer his own. Whatever game the queen was playing, it had already begun, and John was right at the center of it. John Carter woke up in a room so quiet it made his ears ring. The soft blue glow of the walls pulsed like a heartbeat, and for a few moments he forgot he was no longer on Earth. Then the strange scent in the air reminded him alien spices, cool metal, and something sweet he couldn't name. He sat up slowly, eyes scanning the room. The bed beneath him was soft and warm, unlike any military bunk he'd ever slept on. But the comfort did nothing to ease the storm in his mind. He wasn't a guest. He wasn't even just a prisoner. He had been chosen to be something he didn't understand, and the more he thought about it, the less it made sense. A human, offered as a slave, now marked as a queen's consort in a court of powerful beings. Barely respected his kind? Something was wrong beneath the surface, he could feel it. When Queen Zalira entered the chamber, her presence silenced every thought in his head. She walked like a ruler, but looked at him like a scientist studying a rare specimen. She asked if he had slept well, offered food he couldn't identify, and spoke with an odd mix of warmth and calculation. John watched her carefully, trying to understand her angle. He noticed that she always spoke in a way that avoided certain subjects: war, Earth, her own people's opinions of him. When he asked why she had really chosen him, she smiled but gave no answer, only saying, "You will understand soon." The days that followed were strange and slow. He wasn't locked in a cell, but he wasn't allowed to leave the royal quarters either. Guards stood silently at the doors, never speaking, always watching. The palace staff treated him politely, but never met his eyes. Whenever the queen summoned him, she asked odd questions about human emotions, about pain, about memories. She seemed fascinated by how he described childhood, friendship, or fear. Once, she asked what love meant to humans, and when he answered, she remained silent for a long time. Something about her behavior felt rehearsed, like she was pretending to be more gentle than she really was. John started listening carefully to the palace whispers. Servants muttered in hushed voices when they thought he couldn't hear. Some called him a threat. Others feared what the queen was doing. One day, he passed two nobles in the corridor who stopped speaking the moment they saw him, bowing stiffly but staring with cold eyes. He realized something more dangerous was happening. His presence was shaking the fragile order of this alien empire. That night, as he stared out of the wide glass window of his chamber, watching stars drift slowly across the dark sky, the queen arrived without her usual guards. She looked tired, as if she hadn't slept in days. She asked him if he hated her for what had happened. He didn't know how to answer. She sat beside him and, for the first time, shared something personal. "My people are dying," she said softly. "Not from war or famine. From within. We are losing what made us strong. Our minds are still sharp, but our hearts grow weaker with each generation. We were not always this way." John listened, unsure if this was the truth or another game. She continued, explaining how the Thalara had once been passionate, creative, full of life, but over the centuries, they had become too perfect, too controlled, and something essential had been lost. She believed that humans, despite being seen as primitive, held a missing piece of the puzzle. You feel pain, yet you fight. You feel love, yet you still lead. We forgot how to do that, she said. John didn't respond right away. He was still trying to decide if he believed her. He asked her why she didn't tell her people about this problem. The queen looked away, her expression tightening. They wouldn't understand. They see emotion as weakness now. If they knew why I brought you here, they would turn against me. That was the first time John realized the truth. She wasn't just choosing him. She was risking everything for a plan only she understood. Maybe she truly believed in it. Or maybe she was just desperate. Either way, he was caught in the middle. She stood up then and whispered, "There's a place beneath this palace, ancient, hidden. When you're ready, I will show you. Then you'll understand everything." With that, she left him alone in the silent room once again. As the night deepened and stars passed over the alien sky, John Carter sat quietly, trying to make sense of the Queen's words. The longer he stayed, the more he realized he wasn't just a visitor or even a symbol. He was becoming a key in something far larger than he had imagined. And somewhere deep inside, a question burned brighter than ever. Was he being saved or used? John Carter followed the Queen in silence, his heart beating faster with every step as they descended the spiral staircase hidden behind a wall of smooth stone. The path was narrow and dark, lit only by strange symbols glowing faintly on the walls. He had expected luxury, even mystery, in an alien palace, but this was different. The air was thick with age, and the silence felt heavy, as if ancient memories were watching. Queen Zalira moved ahead without fear, her long cloak dragging across the cold floor, her face unreadable. She had said this place would reveal everything, that it would show him why she had chosen him, why she had risked her throne, and why she believed humanity might be the last hope for her dying empire. But as they reached the bottom of the stairway and the heavy stone door opened with a slow grinding sound, John realized he was not ready for what waited on the other side. The chamber was vast and silent, shaped like a dome, its ceiling lost in shadows. In the center stood a towering structure, a throne made not of metal or stone, but of something that shimmered and pulsed like a living thing. Around it were ancient carvings, pictures that seemed to tell a story older than the empire itself. Zaylira stepped forward, her voice soft but steady as she began to speak. She told him that this was the original seat of the Thalara, from a time when they were still learning, still feeling, still dreaming. This throne was once the heart of their rule, but over time, it had been sealed away, forgotten, because it was powered not by energy, but by emotion. Only a ruler who could truly feel not just control, but love, suffer, hope, could sit on it and survive. When the Thalara began to cut emotion from their minds to make their society more efficient, they lost the ability to use the throne, and with it, they lost the soul of their empire. No one had dared return since then. No one but her. John stared at the throne, a strange energy pulsing in the air around it. He asked her why she brought him here. Why a human? Why him of all people? Zaylira looked at him with eyes that no longer seemed cold, but tired, maybe even afraid. She told him that when she studied humans, she saw something her people had long forgotten: a fire that refused to die, a strength that came not from power, but from feeling everything deeply and still standing tall. She had studied many, but something in his records, the way he fought for his fallen crew, the way he survived when others gave up, told her he was different. She believed he might be able to awaken the throne again, not as a king, but as a bridge between what her people were and what they must become if they hoped to survive. But there was more. Zaylira revealed that the crown she wore was not just a symbol of rule. It was a lock, and the key was hidden in the throne itself. If the throne rejected her, she would lose everything. If it rejected him, he could die. She had hidden this truth from her council, her court, even her own family. To them, this place was a myth. But she believed in it and in him. The air seemed to grow colder as she approached the throne and placed her hands on its side. It reacted immediately, glowing softly, as if sensing her presence. She stepped back and looked at John. "Now you try," she said. His body tensed as he approached. He didn't know what to expect: pain, energy, visions. He placed his hands where hers had been. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the surface of the throne shifted beneath his fingers. A wave of warmth shot through his chest, and in a blink, he was no longer in the chamber. He was somewhere else, floating in memories not his own. He saw the rise of the Thalara, their beauty and brilliance, their fall into silence. He felt their loneliness, their fear of becoming empty shells. He saw Zaylira as a child, weeping over a dying tree in a garden. No one visited anymore, her heart still open, while others around her had closed theirs. And then he saw something that shook him: a vision of himself, but not as he was. In the vision, he stood beside Zaylira, not as a slave, not even as a consort, but as something more: an equal, a leader, holding her hand as the throne lit up behind them. The image vanished, and he fell back with a gasp, sweat on his face, his hands shaking. The queen rushed to him, asking what he saw. He looked at her, unsure what to say, because the vision had felt real, as if it wasn't just a possibility but a future already waiting. Zaylira looked at the throne and saw that its glow had not faded. In fact, it was brighter than before. For the first time in centuries, it was awake. She whispered that the throne had accepted him. Not fully, not yet, but it had responded, and that meant hope was not lost. John stood up slowly, his body still recovering from what he had seen. He looked at Zaylira, and for the first time, he didn't see just a queen or an alien ruler. He saw a woman carrying a burden too large for one soul, and yet still trying to save her people, even if it meant trusting someone from a world they all saw as lesser. Before they could speak further, a sharp alarm echoed through the stairway above. The queen's face turned pale. Someone had discovered the entrance. They were no longer alone. Zalira turned to John and said, "You must return to your room. No one can know we came here. Not yet. If they do, everything will fall apart." John nodded, still dazed, still unsure if he was dreaming. They hurried back up the stairs, sealing the passage behind them. As the walls closed and the palace returned to its usual quiet, John knew one thing with certainty: the queen had trusted him with a secret powerful enough to shake an empire. And now, whether he liked it or not, he was part of it. The palace buzzed with tension like never before as John Carter tried to catch his breath in the dim light of his small chamber. He could still feel the strange power of the throne pulsing in his veins, a secret now shared between him and Queen Zalira, but outside his door, the danger was real and growing. The alarms had warned of intruders, but what John did not yet know was that the threat came not from outside the palace walls, but from inside among the very people sworn to serve the queen. Zalira's empire had survived for centuries through order and fear, but beneath the glittering surface, a dangerous rebellion was brewing. A group of powerful nobles and military commanders who opposed Zalira's vision of change had been quietly gathering support. They feared the queen's interest in a human, a species they saw as weak and unpredictable, and they hated the idea that Zalira might share power with an outsider. These rebels whispered in shadows, plotting to strike before the throne's power could be restored, hoping to seize control and return the empire to its cold, emotionless rule. John sensed the danger even before Zalira told him. He saw it in the hurried footsteps in the hallways, the guarded looks of the palace guards, and the hushed conversations that stopped whenever he entered a room. He also noticed how Zalira, so strong and confident before, now carried a constant worry in her eyes. The queen summoned him to a secret meeting in the war room, a place filled with star charts, holograms, and maps of the galaxy. There, she revealed the full scale of the rebellion. It was bigger than John had imagined. Many trusted advisors had turned against her, believing that the old ways were better, that emotions made rulers weak and vulnerable. Zalira explained that if the rebels succeeded, the throne would be lost forever, and the hope for her people's survival would die with it. She needed John's help, not just as a symbol of the new path, but as a fighter. Though he was a stranger to their politics and customs, his human instincts and experience made him valuable. John listened carefully, his mind racing. He realized that surviving this rebellion would mean more than just winning a battle. It meant breaking an empire's deep-rooted fears and prejudices. Zalira handed him a small device, a communicator that could reach only those loyal to the queen. She told him to contact the few allies hidden in the palace and prepare for a fight that might decide the fate of the entire empire. As John left the war room, he felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. The rebellion was no longer a distant threat. It was already moving, and he had to act fast. Over the next hours, he met with Zalira's secret supporter soldiers who still believed in the power of emotion, scholars who dreamed of a future where their people could feel again, and diplomats who saw in John a chance to bridge worlds. Each meeting was tense, filled with whispered warnings and cautious plans. John's human courage and straightforwardness earned their respect quickly, but the danger was clear. If the rebels discovered these gatherings, the queen's loyalists would be executed without mercy. The palace itself seemed to close in around them as the rebellion gained strength. John felt eyes watching his every move, voices carrying rumors, and shadows hiding enemies. One night, while returning from a secret meeting, he barely escaped an ambush set by rebel guards. His heart pounded as he ran through the dark corridors, hearing the footsteps behind him, until he found safety behind a locked door. The narrow escape made him realize that the rebellion was closer than he thought, maybe even deeper inside the palace than anyone knew. Meanwhile, Zalira struggled with her own battles. As the queen, she had to stay strong and composed, but John saw the cracks in her armor during their brief moments together. She confessed that ruling was more than power. It was sacrifice, loneliness, and endless fear of betrayal. Yet, despite everything, she trusted John in a way she had never trusted anyone before. This trust was dangerous, but also their greatest weapon. The bond between them grew stronger, not just as ruler and slave, but as partners facing a storm that could destroy them both. The night before the planned attack by the rebels, John and Zalira stood together in the palace garden under the cold alien stars. They talked quietly, sharing hopes and fears. Zalira spoke of a future where humans and Thalara might rule side by side, not as masters and slaves, but as equals. John, though uncertain of what lay ahead, promised to fight for that future no matter the cost. As dawn approached, the palace was silent, but beneath its surface, the rebels prepared to strike. Their plan was brutal, and fast they aimed to capture Zalira during a council meeting, shatter the throne's power, and declare a new order ruled by fear and control. The palace guards loyal to the queen were outnumbered, but not outmatched. The first sounds of conflict shattered the quiet shouts, the clash of weapons and alarms ringing through the halls. John found himself in the center of the battle, fighting alongside Zalira's loyalists. His human instincts guided him move fast, strike hard, never give up. The rebels were fierce, and the palace that had once been a place of beauty and peace became a battlefield. Every corner hid danger. Every shadow could be an enemy. John and Zalira moved together, their connection stronger than ever. In the chaos, John discovered a hidden passage leading directly to the throne room if the rebels reached it first. All would be lost. With no time to lose, he and a small group of loyal fighters rushed through the secret corridors. They arrived just as the rebels forced open the throne room doors. Inside, the throne pulsed with a strange light, reacting to the conflict around it. Zalira faced the leader of the rebels, a cold and ruthless man who once had been her closest advisor. Their fight was fierce, words sharp and bitter. But Zalira, empowered by the throne and John's presence, fought not just with strength, but with a passion the rebels could not understand. John joined the fight, surprising the rebels with his determination and skill. Slowly, the tide turned. One by one, the rebels fell or fled. When the last attacker was driven out, silence returned to the palace. Zalira stood tall but exhausted, her crown glowing softly as the throne recognized the victory. John looked at her and felt something he had never expected, a deep respect for this alien queen who had trusted him with everything. The rebellion had been crushed, but John knew this was only the beginning. The real challenge was to rebuild an empire broken by fear and hate, and to prove that the future could be different, a future where a human once a slave stood beside the queen as a partner, not a prisoner. Together, they had faced the darkness within, but what waited outside was even greater. The stars beyond the palace held mysteries and dangers that no one could ignore. As dawn broke over the alien world, John understood that his journey was far from over. The rebellion had tested him, but it had also opened a door to a future no one had dared to imagine before. The battle inside the palace was over, but the war for the future of the empire had only just begun. John Carter stood beside Queen Zalira on the balcony overlooking the vast alien city, the first light of the new day casting long shadows on the tall spires and glowing streets. The rebellion had failed, but its wounds were deep, and the question now was how to heal a broken world built on fear and old hatred. Zalira's people looked to her with hope, but also with doubt. Many still feared the human who once was a slave, the outsider who had changed the rules by standing beside their queen. John knew that winning a battle did not mean winning trust, and to create a future where humans and Thalara could live as equals, something greater had to happen, something that would change the very fabric of their worlds. Zalira called a grand council, inviting leaders from every corner of the empire, including the remaining rebels who had surrendered. It was a risky move, one that shocked many, but she believed that peace could not be built on silence or fear. In the great hall, beneath massive banners and shining crystals, John watched as old enemies sat side by side, their faces marked by years of conflict and suspicion. The queen's voice was steady as she spoke about unity, change, and a future where differences would not divide but strengthen them. Yet, beneath her calm, John saw the burden she carried. She knew that not everyone would accept this new way and that her throne could be lost if she made the wrong choice. After her speech, the room erupted into heated debate. Some leaders demanded the human be sent away, fearing his influence and the strange power he now shared with Zalira. Others, tired of war and destruction, whispered about hope and a future where peace could last. John felt the weight of every word, every look. He had come so far, but now he faced the greatest test of all. Would the Empire accept him, not as a gift or a tool, but as a true partner? In the days that followed, John and Zalira worked together to build bridges. They traveled through the cities and villages, meeting people, listening to their fears and dreams. John learned about the history of the Thalara, their pain, their victories, and their losses. He shared stories of Earth, of humanity's struggles and hopes. Slowly, walls began to fall, but the threat of old hatred still lingered like a shadow waiting to strike. One night, as John prepared to rest, a secret message arrived, a warning from a spy that a faction of rebels refused to surrender and planned a final attack to assassinate Zalira during the upcoming peace ceremony. The news hit John like a cold wind. If the queen were killed, the fragile hope they had built would vanish, replaced by chaos and endless war. He rushed to Zalira, and together they made a choice. Instead of hiding behind guards and fear, they would face the danger head-on, showing their people that courage and trust were stronger than violence. The day of the ceremony arrived, and the grand hall filled with thousands of citizens, diplomats, and soldiers. John and Zalira stood side by side on the stage, their hands almost touching, a silent promise that they were united. As the speeches began, John scanned the crowd for any sign of danger. Suddenly, a figure broke through the guards, a rebel armed and desperate. Time seemed to slow. John acted without thinking, moving swiftly to block the attack, but the rebel was skilled and strong. The struggle was fierce and raw, the crowd gasping in shock. Zalira stepped forward, her voice calm but powerful as she ordered the guards to hold their fire. She spoke to the attacker, not with anger, but with understanding, offering a chance for peace, a new path where even enemies could become allies. The rebel hesitated, confused by her mercy. In that moment, something changed. The tension in the hall lifted slightly, and the attacker lowered his weapon. It was a fragile victory, but a victory nonetheless. After the ceremony, Zalira and John stood once again on the balcony, the city alive with cautious hope below. They knew the road ahead was long and uncertain. The choice to forgive, to trust, to unite was not easy, but it was the only choice that could save their worlds from endless darkness. John looked at Zalira and realized that his journey from slave to partner was more than a story of survival. It was a story of transformation for two very different peoples. The queen who once ruled with fear now ruled with hope, and the human who was once a captive now held the power to change a galaxy. As the stars shone above them, John understood that the future was not set by birth or power, but by the choices they made together. Their alliance was fragile, but it was real.